What is up, guys? Welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Josh Fan of ShowMeFootball.com, and today I am back to talk Mizzou football recruiting. Exciting times right now in the world of Mizzou football recruiting, as Eli Drinkwitz has done a lot to make up for a slow start to the class of 2024, and he's in on some big names, including one who is going to be making a decision very soon. Let's talk about it. So, as I said, Eli Drinkwitz got off to a very slow start in the 2024 class, and a lot of people were looking down on his recruiting, including myself. And look, this year is very important for Drinkwitz as far as on-the-field results. But one of the big things that kept people believing in him so far is the recruiting and the fact that he has a lot of talent coming in. He's brought in a lot of talent so far, and if this team is ever going to be really good, it's probably going to be because of the recruits that Eli Drinkwitz brought in. And so when his recruiting looked like it might be on the decline, people started to get really worried. And the doubt about whether or not Eli Drinkwitz was the right man for the job continued to grow. Mizzou's class was sitting somewhere in the 70s or 80s, and that's just not a place that you want to be in like the month of June. Mizzou should usually be doing a lot better than that at that time of year. But then Mizzou had their Gold Rush event in Columbia where they hosted a bunch of recruits, and that weekend was absolutely huge for them because it led to a streak of commitments that dramatically raised the ranking of their class, and they made up a lot of ground in the 2024 class. Some of the names that Mizzou was able to pick up over the recent weeks, we got four-star linebacker out of Arkansas, Brian Huff. That was a huge recruiting win because this was a guy that had a committable offer from Arkansas. He is one of the top 10 players in the state of Arkansas. Drinkwitz nabs him. Some other names include wide receiver James Madison from St. Thomas Aquinas High School in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. He is really probably the biggest commit they've had so far, both as far as the rankings and as far as a guy that could help bring some other guys with him. In fact, he already has a couple of his teammates also from the same high school, Nicholas Rodriguez, the four-star linebacker, and then, of course, Justin Bodford, the three-star defensive tackle. They also landed a commitment from four-star defensive back Cameron Keys, also from the state of Florida, but he is from Lynn Haven as opposed to Fort Lauderdale. But those are some of the most notable names that Mizzou was able to nab over the past month or so. And now they're starting to climb up the rankings a little bit. On Rivals.com, their team recruiting ranking is now 58th in the nation. Not where Mizzou quite wants to be yet, but they also have less commits right now than most other schools, which is why their ranking is so low. But if you're actually to go by their average star rating, which means, quality of recruit, Mizzou is actually somewhere in the top 30. So even though they are not where they want to be as far as numbers and, how many of their top targets they actually have committed, of the guys that they do have committed, they do have a very good average star rating. And so if Drinkwitz and company are able to keep on the same pace that they are now and, have a really good finish to this class, I'm very confident that they'll end up somewhere in the top 30. Which is where they need to be, and that's kind of the precedent that Drinkwitz has set for himself here at Missouri as far as recruiting classes go. Like, you got to be somewhere in the top 30. And luckily, like I said, Drinkwitz is in on a few huge names, and those huge names are why everybody is here. So let's go ahead and get to talking about them. So let's start with arguably the number one target in the class, and that is SLU High School wide receiver, five-star Ryan Wingo. Mizzou is considered to be a leader for five-star Ryan Wingo. Ryan Wingo is set to commit on National Signing Day in December. He just visited Mizzou last week, and things seem to be trending very well for Mizzou in regards to Ryan Wingo. The two main players believed to be in this recruitment for Ryan Wingo are Texas and Mizzou. Obviously, the appeal with Texas is it's a big brand. They're also joining the SEC here very soon, and so there's the appeal still of playing in the SEC, even if he were to go to Texas. And Texas also has a lot of NIL money to throw around. Worth noting that earlier this month, Ryan Wingo got a crystal ball prediction on 247sports.com to the University of Texas. But I think when paying attention to Ryan Wingo's recruitment, you almost have to kind of ignore what the national guys are thinking a little bit, because I feel like the general sentiment among them is that Mizzou isn't a major player or isn't the leader in his recruitment, when a lot of the local guys are saying that Mizzou is the leader in Ryan Wingo's recruitment. It's kind of similar to the Luther Burden situation a couple years ago when they were recruiting him, when people were just assuming it was going to be Georgia because it's like, oh, it's Georgia versus Missouri for a recruit. So yeah, I think it's going to be Georgia. And so a lot of people were saying Georgia, even though everyone that actually knew what they were talking about knew that Luther Burden was going to Missouri. And it was obvious for a long time. And I think it's a similar situation with Ryan Wingo. Not saying that he's a lock to Missouri or anything like that. Texas is still very much in this race, as well as other schools kind of lurking in the background. But Mizzou is right there. Mizzou is right there for Ryan Wingo. Mizzou also has the NIL factor. Ryan Wingo is paying attention to what Mizzou has done for Luther Burden and all the money and all the attention that he's getting and how he's kind of the star of the program. Ryan Wingo sees that, and I think that factors a lot into his decision. And even though Texas has a lot to offer in those areas too, Mizzou is only a couple hours away. From what I've heard, Ryan Wingo's family would appreciate if he stayed close to home so they could watch all of his home games. Wingo also had this to say about his recruitment. I found this tweet on Twitter from @collegeedits. And this is a quote from Ryan Wingo saying, "Missouri, they're recruiting me hard. I have a good relationship with the coaches and players since it's close to home. Being the hometown hero and staying home would be cool." Obviously, you can't overstate the impact of getting a recruit like Ryan Wingo in this class would be. It's a 5-star recruit. It would be Drink's second 5-star recruit if he's able to land him. And I think Missouri has a really good shot. Like, they're in the thick of this for Ryan Wingo. And it'll also help with Ryan Wingo, who is, at this time, scheduled to commit in December on National Signing Day. It's going to help with Wingo if Missouri can land a couple of their other top targets to try and convince Wingo to come to Missouri. They already have one on board, James Madison, the other 4-star wide receiver commit that they have. He was on his visit with Ryan Wingo last week, recruiting him to Missouri. He's trying really hard to get other guys in this class. And even though he's from Florida, he seems to be catching on to the whole Lou to the Zoo theme very quickly and KC to the Zoo thing. He tweeted out a graphic even that had Williams Nwaneri, who we're going to get to in a second, and Jeremiah Mcclellan, the 4-star receiver from CBC. And I'll also get to him in a minute. But James Madison, he's trying really hard to get all these guys to come. I love the effort that he's putting in to try and make this recruiting class special. But let's move on to the next name, the one that everyone is here for most likely, and that is 5-star defensive end, arguably the number 1 player in the class of 2024 from Lee Summit North High School, Williams Nwaneri. So Williams Nwaneri was rumored to maybe be making a decision on August 1st. But now reports are coming mostly from Oklahoma's rival site that Williams Nwaneri is planning on making his college decision on August 7th. There was also another August date that I heard potentially. We don't know for sure yet, but most expect Nwaneri to commit here somewhere around the first week of August. It also seems to be somewhat of a 2-horse race for the commitment of Williams Nwaneri. Oklahoma and Missouri, those are the 2 schools. Georgia is kind of a distant third. It's really just Oklahoma and Missouri. And Missouri's been in the thick of Nwaneri's recruitment for a very long time. They were one of the very first schools to offer him. However, he's been considered an Oklahoma lean for a while now. He might even still be considered an Oklahoma lean, depending on who you talk to. It's also worth noting that Lee Summit North has really pushed a lot of kids to Oklahoma. Their head coach, Jamar Mosey, was a running back for Oklahoma back in the day. He has a son who is a very highly touted wide receiver recruit in the class of 2025. He's considered an Oklahoma lean. Caden Green, the 4-star offensive tackle committed to Oklahoma last recruiting cycle, and Oklahoma has just had a lot of success recruiting Lee Summit North High School. That said, Mizzou has had some success as well. They landed Armin Membo last class. He played some games as a true freshman last year, the offensive lineman. So even though Lee Summit North's head coach is an Oklahoma guy, I think the relationship is still pretty good between that staff and Missouri staff. And I'm not necessarily saying that Jamar Mosey is out here forcing his players to go to Oklahoma or anything, but I definitely think he encourages them to check out Oklahoma. And I mean, look, I get it. You know, he's an alumni. You know, he wants players to go there. It also is a good program. There's no denying that. But I think he still leaves it up to the kids at the end of the day. But there is some Oklahoma influence. But when you're talking about a recruit who is as high profile as Williams Nwaneri, Missouri is going to have a chance, and that's because of NIL. The same NIL that was able to bring Luther Burden to Mizzou, you can be sure that they're rolling out similar packages for recruits like Ryan Wingo and Williams Nwaneri. That's why Mizzou is so heavily in the race for those two guys. Without NIL, you know, there's so much chaos involved with NIL nowadays. There's a lot of people that say NIL is going to destroy college football. And look, NIL is going to take away good players like it did with Dominic Lovett, but it's also going to give you some really good players because without NIL, Mizzou is not in on the recruitments of guys like Ryan Wingo and Williams Nwaneri and Luther Burden for that matter. And Eli Drinkwitz, as much as people want to criticize him as a coach, he can recruit. And, you know, you just listen to the guy talk. It's no wonder how he's able to sell families and sell kids on coming to this program. He's a very charismatic guy. And so over the past few weeks, even though Nwaneri has been considered an Oklahoma lean, we've seen, and that's why everyone is here and there's so much hype about Nwaneri right now, is Nwaneri has gotten 2 future casts from Rivals.com projecting him to commit to Missouri here in a couple weeks. And a lot of fans are getting excited. And I think, you know, it's not a layup that Nwaneri is coming to Missouri, but it's a lot more of a 50-50 shot, whereas before it seemed like it was 60-40 Oklahoma. And in fact, one of the editors over at Rivals for the Kansas State site who future casted Nwaneri to Mizzou a couple days ago, he flipped his prediction from Oklahoma to Missouri. This is a guy that formerly thought that Nwaneri was going to end up at Oklahoma. So all of a sudden, there's a lot of smoke around Nwaneri to Missouri right now. Now, if you ask the Oklahoma guys, and if you ask the Oklahoma Rivals guys, who hosted a Twitter space last night insisting that Nwaneri was still going to end up at Oklahoma, I understand the confidence from the Oklahoma side, but I think they're not giving Missouri enough credit. I also have access to read other teams' Rivals message boards, and I see a lot of Oklahoma fans saying, you know, why would he go to Missouri? Oh, screw Missouri. Eli Drinkwitz isn't even going to be there next year. He's going to get fired, which, by the way, I find funny because Brent Venables didn't exactly have a great season last year. Oklahoma has an easy schedule this year, so they should be able to back in to about 8 or 9 wins, but, you know, it's not like Venables is very established at Oklahoma any more than Eli Drinkwitz is at Missouri, but I digress. So I understand the confidence coming from the Oklahoma side. Oklahoma still has a lot of success recruiting LSN. You can't deny that. And Nwaneri has been interested in Oklahoma for a long time. But again, I think NIL is a huge factor here. I think Eli Drinkwitz has been quietly confident. Well, maybe I shouldn't say quietly, because if you guys have noticed, he's been sending out some tweets over the past couple weeks with just the letter W, likely talking about either or both Ryan Wingo and Williams Nwaneri, dropping subtle hints. I wouldn't be surprised if Eli Drinkwitz was able to win over the family and win over Nwaneri here over the recent weeks, causing some of these future casts to be switched over to Missouri. And then something that happened over the past week was Williams Nwaneri was supposed to attend Oklahoma's barbecue kind of recruiting visit thing that they put on annually, and he didn't show up for that. Now, Oklahoma mods are saying for their rival site that Williams Nwaneri didn't show up because he was grounded. Okay. I'm not sure where they got that from or who told them that, but they claimed that he was grounded and that's why he didn't show up. Yet, Williams Nwaneri is visiting Oregon this weekend. So maybe that's the reason that he didn't show up to the Oklahoma event. But I find it a little strange that he was supposedly grounded for the Oklahoma barbecue, but is visiting Oregon just a few days later. So I guess his grounding just happened to end in the middle of the week, right after the Oklahoma visit was supposed to happen. I don't know what the true story is there. I don't know if Oklahoma guys are making this up to make themselves feel better, but I think Missouri has a lot of momentum here. Like, there just seems to be a lot of smoke around Missouri and Williams Nwaneri. And the future casts have me very optimistic, and I don't think people put those future casts in for nothing. Another thing that I will note is that the Oklahoma Rivals guys on their Twitter Spaces last night also said they reached out to Clint Cosgrove, who works for Rivals.com. He was the other future cast for Williams Nwaneri, and they were trying to say that Clint Cosgrove said it was still Oklahoma 60-40, but that he only put in the Mizzou future cast because he assumed that Nwaneri was going to visit Missouri again, and so that his future cast doesn't actually matter. And I find that explanation a little flimsy just because he still has his future cast in for Nwaneri to Mizzou. So why would he do that if he thought it was still Oklahoma that was leading the race? Something's not right there. I think they're denying the smoke around Missouri. That's what they're trying to do. And they just can't fathom the fact that they could lose a recruit to Missouri, even though they stole Luther Burden from them a couple years ago. So bottom line is that Mizzou has a legitimate shot to land the number one player in the country here in the next couple weeks. A lot more of a shot than people thought they had a couple weeks ago. It was assumed that Oklahoma was the leader, Missouri was a close second, Georgia a distant third. Now it seems like Missouri is right there in this race, and they made up a lot of ground over the last couple of weeks. So we'll see what happens, but I think Mizzou fans have reason to be excited and to pay attention to the recruitment and the decision of Williams Nwaneri. And obviously, it cannot be overstated, landing the number one player in the country. And that would be the second time that the University of Missouri landed the number one overall player in the country in football. I would have to go back and look how many schools have done that before, but I can't imagine that it's many. And I know that I think almost all of the 5-stars that have committed in the 2024 class have gone to like 4 schools, meaning that if Mizzou gets either Nwaneri or Wingo or both, they're going to be one of 5 schools to even have a 5-star recruit in the 2024 class, which is just awesome to think about. But now that we got kind of the big recruitment out of the way, the one that everyone's raving about right now, I wanted to touch on Jeremiah Mcclellan, the 4-star wide receiver out of CBC. This is important because Mcclellan included Missouri in his top 5 schools list that he released, I want to say like a week or 2 ago. Other schools that were in that were Georgia, LSU, Ohio State. Ohio State is really considered the leader in his recruitment, have been for a long time. Ryan Day Ohio State in general has recruited CBC historically well. A lot of CBC kids have gone to Ohio State over the years, but it was reported late last night by Steve Wiltfong of 247sports.com that Mcclellan was canceling his Oregon visit and instead visiting Missouri. And Jeremiah Mcclellan is currently at Missouri as I'm making this video. And this is a really big development. Again, Ohio State was considered the leader for a very long time. I'm not saying Mizzou is overtaking Ohio State as the leader, but I think this was a recruitment where Mcclellan was going to keep Mizzou in it to the very end, but no one ever really thought Mizzou had that great of a shot. Now it seems like there's a real shot, especially with all the smoke around Nwaneri and Wingo. If Mizzou can get either of those guys, it improves their shot with Mcclellan. And James Madison, I mentioned a minute ago, the other wide receiver commit, he put out a graphic with Nwaneri, Wingo, himself, and then Mcclellan on it. And I just think that, there's something going on. There's something brewing. Like NIL checks must be clearing right now, because Drinkwitz also put out a tweet not too long ago saying to buckle up, and he put the tiger emoji, fire emoji, and tiger emoji, which usually means his tweet has something to do with recruiting. And we never really knew what that was about. And maybe it just means the momentum is picking up with their top targets. And Mcclellan is an example of that. He's visiting Mizzou right now, and I just think things are trending really positively. Like, there's a quiet confidence right now with the Mizzou staff on their recruitments of Mcclellan, Wingo, and Nwaneri. And I just got to say, guys, if Mizzou lands all three of those guys, this is going to be one hell of a freaking class. I'm not going to put a percentage chance or anything on the likelihood of Mizzou landing all three of these guys, but they have a really good chance. And I would say there's at least a 75% chance they get at least one of these guys. There's a lot of reason to have confidence right now, but that's kind of everything that's going on right now in the world of Mizzou football recruiting. It's exciting times, guys. A lot of big decisions to watch over the next couple of months. A lot of big developments in recruiting. We'll continue to watch what happens. I'll be right here covering it for you guys. But I want to know from you guys, which of these recruits would you like to see come to Mizzou the most? Let me know down in the comments. What do you think Mizzou's chances are with all three of them? I'd love to hear from you guys. But with all that being said, make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Mizzou fans can find this and so they can get their Mizzou recruiting updates. And make sure you check out my work on showmefootball.com, and I will see you all